Day 2. I haven't changed my clothes and the fire's still burning. Isn't that amazing? Today's story will center on the times that my older brother talked me into doing things that I probably should never have done. The first one was, there was a dog in our neighborhood, a Great Dane by the name of Missy, who used to dig really deep holes out in the yard. And Wally thought it would be really funny if I would go down and pretend like I was a prairie dog, because we had gone to the zoo and you know the prairie dogs come up like this. And he said, Chris, go down the hole and stick your head out like a prairie dog. I thought it would look cool. I got down the hole and I couldn't get out. It went down way further than I thought it did. And by the time I got in there, he kept saying, come on, stick your head out, stick your head out. And I could barely get my fingers through the top of the hole. And so he thought I was just messing around. He walked off and left. And I'm in there screaming in this hole. And I hear my parents come out of Dot and Vern's house and they said, Walter, where is your sister? I don't know. He thought I'd crawled out of the hole and gone somewhere else. So I was down in that hole for like 2.5 hours. And finally, my mom got worried enough that she came around the yard to just look around, and she heard me screaming, and it wasn't quite, you know, as dramatic as the baby Jessica rescue in Texas, but it was pretty dramatic for me. And of course, you know, Wally said, I had no idea she went into that hole. I don't know why she went into that hole. You think I would have learned. But sometime down the line, in the next parsonage that we were at, Wally and his friend Brian Scott decided to dig up the garden that was finished for the summer. And they dug probably about a 6-foot pit. It took them 3 days to do it. And it was about 6 feet across. And then they got the garden hoses and filled it with water so it turned into an absolute sludge pit. And I just watched them do this process and I thought, this is stupid, why would you do that? And Wally said to me, Chris, take a running jump and jump in it. It's going to be just like a swimming pool. I have no idea that he's going to lie to me like that, so I said, okay, am I going to get in trouble? No, you're going to be fine. So I run and I jump in this sludge pit, and it starts sucking me down. And I am about here screaming, get me out of this! And he and Brian are laughing their heads off, and so finally I take a handful of this stuff. It's kind of like that Cowpie Lagoon out on 34, but not as smelly. And I just start throwing it at him, and then he got really mad at me. And I said, get me out of here or I'm going to tell Mom. So he pulled me out, and I looked like the creature from the Black Lagoon, and he said, you better get washed off or Mom's going to get really mad at you. Well, I'm trying to walk across the yard, and it feels like I've got diaper stuff hanging all over me. And I didn't know what to do, so I walk right into the kitchen, which is a white linoleum floor, and I start walking across the kitchen, and my mom came in, and she literally screamed. Not like fake, but the movie type scream where you go, ah! And then she marched me right outside and washed me off, and of course Wally and Brian had disappeared by that point. And all they got in trouble for was they shouldn't have left something there like that for me to fall into. And I tried to explain, of course, but no, it didn't work. That was another time that Wally talked me into something else. The third time that I can remember that he tried to talk me into something else was they found a snake down by railroad tracks by my grandmother's, and he said, Chris, you know, if you nail this snake to the tree, it'll be a sign of the club down here. I have no idea where that came from. And he said it was dead and everything, and so they handed it to me. Well, it wasn't dead, and I didn't know it. So I take a little, like a nail that we found on the ground, and I'm taking a rock and I'm going to do it. The snake starts wiggling, and I now have an incredible fear of snakes. A good snake to me is a dead snake. And I think that's all that Wally tried to do for me, because I got bigger pretty fast, much faster than Brad, and I just wouldn't put up with his garbage anymore. And that's the end of that section of the stories. Today's not well-known fact about Mr. Kuhn is that Mr. Kuhn has the uncanny ability to lay down in bed at night after a long, hard day's work and hold a Time magazine while he's lying on his pillow like this, or even on his side. He's got the magazine here. And the man can fall asleep in 30 seconds or less and still hold the magazine upright, like he's reading it. And he can be completely out, rhythmic breathing and everything. And I'll start to pull the magazine away and his hands will clench on it and he'll sort of open his eyes. I said, you were asleep. And he always says, no, I wasn't. But he was. It's amazing. If you came in the room and you didn't know he was asleep, you'd think he was holding up the magazine and reading. I don't know how you are, but I take a good 30 minutes to be able to fall asleep while my head clears. The man is out in 30 seconds. It's kind of spooky. But I'm you know, for better, for worse, for weirdness, falling asleep, those were the vows. So talk to you tomorrow.